rich and rare. In history's page, let every state advance Australia fair. In joyful strains then let us sing, advance Australia fair.
Hello, you are listening to Radio Maria, and I hope playing the Australian National Anthem doesn't sound like a direct act of aggression towards our next guest. Helena put that on, and now we have a priest and good friend from the Society of Mary, Father Ben D'Souza, who's joining us from Wellington. How are you doing, Father Ben?
I'm good, thank you. It's been a long day. It's 9:30.
9:30. Well, thank you very much for joining us. And Father Ben and I first met whilst studying at the Angelicum in Rome, which was a really sort of joyous period in my life. And one of the amazing things about the Angelicum and getting to study in Rome is that you just meet people from all over the world. It's such a beautiful example of the rich variety that's in the church. And I was saying to Joseph yesterday, one of your brother Marists, that when in the sort of breaks in between lectures at the Angelicum, I thought it was such a beautiful advert for the church, the way that you'd have every single skin colour, every conceivable sort of habit that you could imagine, from the heralds of the gospel in their kind of like knee-high leather boots and tunicals, to everything else that you might imagine, just sort of mixing in this really sort of joyous atmosphere.
And then you had all the languages, and then also every accent of English.
Yeah, including how much time do you spend as a Kiwi when you go into sort of, say, English contexts where people ask you what part of Australia do you come from? Do you get that a lot, or people pick up on the distinctive New Zealand vowels?
People know. Yeah, sometimes people know, sometimes they don't, and it's a hit or a miss. And I don't. I'm not from the snowflake generation, so I don't get offended by it. I take it on the chin and just keep going.
Yeah. For me, the giveaway is always with the eyes, the distinctive New Zealand pronunciation of your eyes, as you said, even there, sort of hut. And if you can ever get a Kiwi to say fish and chips, then you'll definitely know that it's not Australian but New Zealand.
That's right. Fish and chips is a fish.
Yeah.
Fish.
Fish and chops.
That's right.
And tell us a bit about you. Where did you grow up, and what was the atmosphere of faith like growing up, if at all?
So I'm born into a Catholic family. In fact, a few years before I was born, my dad's uncle rather, whose name was Benedict, he died. So Dad's grandma said, I'd like one of my great-grandchildren to be named after me, and I was the next boy who was born. And so that's how I ended up with that name. So that's when I was born in India, and grew up and went to school in India. Most of my primary education was over there in the Catholic school. Catholic schools over there are slightly different too. It's everyone can go to a Catholic school, but they're definitely in the Catholic family. Used to go to mass, in a faith environment as well.
And what part of the country was that?
So that was in Bombay.
In Bombay, okay. Yeah, I remember it was when I visited Bombay when I was, I think, about 21, after leaving university, and I fell in love with masala dosas.
Oh, yes.
Absolutely loved dosas. And where's the family? Like, I often associate sort of D'Souza with either Sri Lanka or with southern India. Where does your D'Souza come from originally?
Yeah, so the D'Souza comes from Goa. So Goa was the Portuguese colony. So we had, culturally we come from Goa. Bombay is sort of like I guess it's a bit like London. There's very few people who live in London that are from London. They always say they're from somewhere else. Bombay is sort of a similar thing, you know. We're from Goa, which is the very Catholic state, and again a Portuguese colony. So that's how we get that. That's how I got that surname with the Portuguese background.
Yeah,
and we'd go back to Goa. Very different.
Yes, no, I travelled down from. I was travelling with a friend at that point. Not that we ceased to become friends, but he went back to England because he didn't have as long to travel as I did. But I remember one of my real regrets in life is that we got offered parts as extras in a Bollywood movie. As they wanted two English policemen, but he wanted to be sure that we got to Goa before he had to go back. And Bombay Mumbai is like the most cosmopolitan, I think, of the Indian cities that we went to, and very international. And then Goa is like very sleepy in comparison. But one of the things in my ignorance, I hadn't realised quite how strong the Catholic faith was there, and so it was a really lovely surprise. And being able to go to the Bom Jesu with I think it's is it the hand of St. Francis Xavier that's there, or a part of St. Francis? He's chopped up in many places.
That's right.
In many pieces.
The old Goa church that's in Goa, and that's where all of his body is except his hand, which is in the Jesu in Rome.
Okay, right. So went there. I remember a guy then as well in a bar that I'd been in Goa in Palolem, and I mentioned to him I was Catholic, and he said, "Well, I'll take you on my motorbike to an early morning mass." And I went to mass at about 6 a.m. in the morning, and the church was absolutely packed, and it was really wonderful. So what was life like then? What age were you when you moved from Bombay?
So I was 11 when we left, and Bombay was, very similar. The parish that I was a part of had 12 priests, and I think it was 50,000 parishioners, and mass would begin at 4:30 on Sunday, every 4:30, 5:30, 6:30, 7:30, right till, and then you'd have 2 hours for lunch, and then they just continue on, and they'd be in different languages, so it's just a lot of people.
And what language would you have been worshipping in?
English.
Right.
Most of the masses were in English. It's a weird thing. A lot of the Catholics would just speak English.
And then the move to New Zealand.
Yes, so we moved to New Zealand, and New Zealand was slightly different. No one wants to go to church at 4:30 in the morning because it's too cold. we left in July, and it was sort of monsoon, towards the end of monsoon, so quite warm. We came right into a New Zealand winter, which was a bit of a rude awakening. So you definitely did not want to wake up that early in the morning.
No.
And Auckland's very humid, and so it's impossible to heat.
Interesting. And what were your sort of initial reaction? Were you excited at the time about moving to New Zealand, or were you sort of reluctant to be leaving behind everything that you'd known in India? And what did you think when you first arrived, apart from, man, this is cold?
Yeah, I mean, you're sort of 11, and so you don't really have friends. Now, this is before the time of Facebook, so no Facebook, no real email or anything like that, so if you want to keep in contact with someone, you get their home phone number. And back then, to call home phone numbers it was too expensive, so we weren't going to do that, and so I wasn't really going to keep in touch with my friends, and so goodbye was just made that. It was just, it wasn't see you later, it was goodbye.
Yeah.
But also at 11, you don't form normally that deep friendships.
Yeah, not as sort of hard to be sort of uprooted from. And what was it that took your family to New Zealand?
I think for my parents, it was just greater educational opportunities, and just opportunities full stop for us as the kids.
Yeah. And which town did you move to?
So we moved to Auckland.
Yeah. And then did you go to a Catholic school there?
Yes, I did. I went to a Catholic school. and we were the chaplains at my school were actually Marist priests. So sort of the connection goes back to probably the first priest that we met would have been Marist.
Okay, and what did this kind of the religious climate of Auckland feel like compared to what you'd been growing up with?
Yes, it was different. It was different. See, in India, the religion, Christianity is still a minority, and it's a soft persecution. At least it was back then, of Christians. Whereas, and so if you're Christian, you're proud of your faith, and you know your faith, and you live your faith. You're more deliberate or intentional, as we'd say today, about your faith. Whereas in New Zealand, it was very different. A lot of people were, you just get baptized, and then the next time you see them would be First Holy Communion.
Yeah.
So it was sort of very different. And a lot of my friends at school, we'd go to the school masses, but they wouldn't be at Sunday Mass. So it was a very different atmosphere compared to in India.
Yeah, and I guess as well, like my experience of India was that the divide between sort of religion and public life is less stark. Obviously, Hinduism, the predominant religion there, but it bleeds over much more into every aspect of the culture. There's far more sort of public devotions and public displays of religion, whereas New Zealand, Australia, England, it's a much more sort of worship and devotions happening behind closed doors. Is that the case?
Yeah, that's about right. Yeah, keep your faith to yourself, keep your faith in your own property, sort of thing, and don't really talk about it. So it is very different.
Yeah, and what sense for you did the idea of what stage did the idea of a vocation start to open up, and was there also a point in your life where you can sort of recognize where the faith wasn't just something you did as a family, but became something that was actually, personal to you, where you had to make a decision, am I going to continue the practice of the faith or not?
Yeah, I think, it was at university. So I must have been at my first year university. And a friend who was in the second year sort of said, do you want to go to Mass? And I didn't really know he was that much of a Catholic to go for a weekday Mass. I said, yeah, sure, why not? And so we went along to Mass, and I thought, and it was a strange Mass, people sitting in a circle, and I wasn't quite sure who the priest was. And so at the end of that Mass, I thought, I'm not going back here again. But then, and I was telling another friend, and she said, yes, that's why we go down to the cathedral. Turns out the cathedral had just been renovated, and it was actually quite nice. So we finished class at 12, and we'd walk down for the 12:15 Mass, and it became like a mini pilgrimage. We'd go on, every Tuesday and Wednesday, I think it was, or Tuesday and Thursday. It was a couple of times a week that we just walked down to Mass, and that was sort of God in a very gentle way, sort of tilling the soil and getting it ready for the next year, which was World Youth Day. There was a group of us that went to World Youth Day, and it was at World Youth Day that was a significant part of my sort of planting the seeds of the faith, so to speak. And I remember it was at the last night having adoration in Randwick Park, with Pope Benedict, and I saw this old man kneeling in the cold. It was the middle of August, so it was quite cold. And I thought, if that old man is doing that in the middle of the night, it must be real. It must be real. That really must be Jesus. And it was this giant monstrance. I remember it very clearly in my mind. And that was a big part for me, because if the Eucharist is real, then everything else is real. If the Eucharist makes sense, and everything else just sort of falls into place. And that was sort of a big part of the call.
Yeah. Amazing. Fascinating how the stories overlap, because World Youth Day in Australia in Sydney was such a big thing for me as well. And I remember I was out at Randwick, and the particular thing which stays with me, I think, was in the Angelus before Mass in the morning, and Pope Benedict giving a little reflection on it, and he spoke something along the lines of, said a line like, Mary's yes was the pivotal moment of human salvation. And I was so struck by that line. But I also remember just the overall atmosphere in Sydney during that. I remember speaking to a Sydney bus driver, and he said to me, this is the best fun week I've ever had driving a bus in Sydney. He said it's even better than the atmosphere when the Olympic Games were on. And he said, normally if people are singing on my bus, there's also beer cans rolling up and down, and I'm going to have to clean up afterwards. He said, this week everybody's singing on my bus and there's no clearing up to do afterwards. Nobody's drunk, but they're still having a fantastic time.
It's incredible that, isn't it, how the Catholics, when they come together, the joy that sort of comes out of that, and the incredible, we become quite proud of where we're from when we're outside.
Yes.
Our own country.
Yes. Yeah.
And people who you don't realize, I did not realize he could sing. He'll be sit next to you in church all your life, quiet as a dormouse, and then all of a sudden you're in this bus in Sydney and they're singing their heart out. It's incredible how that works, and we just become so proud of something that's so vocal and confident, I think.
Yeah, and it shows it sort of matters, like giving young people these spaces in which they sort of practice being proud in their faith, practice boldly proclaiming it, sort of wearing all the symbols of it, really owning it, and then as you're saying, just the power of good friendships, the power of somebody you respect, somebody who you want to be with, saying, come to mass with me or come to this event with me. And it was a good friend who persuaded me to go to World Youth Day, because I was serious about my faith, but I didn't really in any special way want to go, because it just struck me as if it would be like, a lot of Catholics dancing, line dancing and things like that. And it was fantastic. The liturgies were so beautiful, and Pope Benedict's preaching and his example was so powerful. Were you still in Rome at the time of the Jubilee of Youth this summer with Pope Leo, when the canonization of St. Pier Giorgio was supposed to happen but didn't actually end up happening?
Yes, I was there for that. Yes, I was back in Rome, and I was there for the actual canonization as well. So it wasn't meant to be, but I took a bit longer writing than I did. So it was great to be there for that.
Excellent. And did you go out to the vigil at Tor Vergata?
No, I didn't go out for that. I think that was. I think you needed tickets and a whole lot of other things, and I was looking for reasons to procrastinate, and luckily my superior said, Ben, you're not going.
Excellent. But again, there, like the Pope Leo's example of just kneeling in adoration at the vigil the night before. So many of the young people who were in the group that Father John Church and I took out there were just so, that's the moment they spoke of. It was not so much anything he said, although they were very struck by what he said, and he spoke so powerfully and beautifully, but they all spoke about seeing him kneel in adoration for the entirety of the vigil, and how that made them want to kneel too.
That's right. It's a simple thing, isn't it? People really do watch, and especially as priests and bishops, people watch and they observe the smallest details. Even parents, It was very lovely the other day. I had this mother came up for Holy Communion, and so I put our Lord on her tongue, and then as I looked down to bless her child next to her, the 3-year-old had her tongue out, and it was so beautiful, and it just shows that witness.
Yeah.
And so it's the importance of us doing what we believe.
Yeah, there's I really love it at our family mass. One very cute little boy, and whenever he comes up to communion now, and his mother brings him up, and she's holding him in her arms, and then she receives communion on her tongue, he always looks at her and he goes, "Yum yum, my turn." Yum yum, my turn. quite, quite
That's right,
audibly.
that's right,
But you see, this desire is being placed in him by sort of witnessing the way that his mother sort of goes up to receive communion and the whole atmosphere in the church, and he recognizes that he's missing out on something, and he wants it, which is
it's the
wonderful.
importance of fostering that desire.
Yeah, we're going to go to a little bit of music now, just to sort of give out the number and give our listeners a chance to donate, and then we'll get a little bit more into your story, what happened after that World Youth Day. Having triggered you by playing the Australian national anthem before, we're gonna have a Kiwi artist this time. I don't know if you come across Brooke Fraser. So we've got Brooke Fraser with the song Communion. And just a reminder that we are seeking to raise £15,000 for Radio Maria Australia to expand the broadcasting beyond Melbourne and Sydney, to help upgrade the studio equipment, and also to try and get as many of our little blue Marian DAB digital radios into hospitals, hospices, care homes, schools up and down the country. And we've also, I know that we have a number of listeners of Radio Maria in New Zealand, including one of our most generous donors is in Auckland, and I know the Bishop of Palmerston, is it Palmerston North, the diocese of Palmerston, that he's a listener from time to time. So to any of our New Zealand listeners, great to have you with us. If you want to call and donate from England, the number is 0300 302 1251. That's 0300 302 1251, or you can go on the website wherever you are and go to www.radiomariaengland.uk. That's www.radiomariaengland.uk, and you can click on the red button to donate in pounds, or you can go on the blue button if you want to donate in Aussie dollars. Please do be as generous as you can. We're going to listen now to Communion by Brooke Fraser, and then we'll be back for more with Father Ben D'Souza very shortly. You're listening to Radio Maria, and this is day 2 of our Mariathon, seeking to raise £15,000 for Radio Maria Australia. Please do be as generous as you possibly can in donating. It's an exciting time in the church in Australia at the moment, and the gift of a fully up and running Catholic radio would be such an asset to the evangelization of Australia. We want to expand our coverage to beyond Sydney and Melbourne, and get in as many cities and big towns as possible, and eventually the whole country. If that sounds like an exciting prospect to you, and it should, then please do donate something. Something is better than nothing, however small it might feel. So do give us a call on 0300 302 1251. It's 0300 302 1251, or go on the website www.radiomariaengland.uk. That's www.radiomariaengland.uk, and click on the red button to donate in pounds, or you can go on the blue button and donate in Aussie dollars. Thank you so much for your generosity. I'm delighted to be joined by a friend of mine we met whilst studying at the Angelicum in Rome, Father Ben D'Souza, who is, as he was saying to us, originally hails from Bombay, but then moved as an 11-year-old to New Zealand, where he then grew up, continued his education, and eventually entered the Marists. And it's wonderful to have you with us, Father Ben. And actually, we've got, just wandering in behind me, we can say hello and wave. We've got a fellow Kiwi priest, Father Mike Guthrie, who's going to be on next. He's just walked in, so we'll have him on very shortly. But you just before the break, you were telling us about what a formative experience World Youth Day in Sydney was for you. So what happens after that? You've been so inspired by the example of the Pope kneeling in adoration, thinking, if this is real, then everything makes sense.
Well, I went back, and I think normality continued, and it's sort of the trap of sort of what these one-off experiences, or like World Youth Day or camps or great events that you go on. When you get back to life just gets in the way. And I sort of thought maybe that wasn't real. You sort of convinced myself, or let myself be duped into that. And so for a couple of years, I just sort of continued studying. So I was studying a degree in biology at the time. And I just sort of continued studying as my way of running away from God, so to speak. As you can tell, that didn't turn out very well.
You did a terrible job of that.
Yes, but it didn't stop me from trying, and so I finished that, and then I went to teachers' college. I thought I'm going to train to be a biology teacher. Still kept running away, and and God just sort of let me go, so to speak. And but then after that year, while I was at teachers' college, it became quite clear that, and again, which is why I wanted to go to the Angelicum, was because I realized that I knew a lot about the world. I learned a lot about biology, but I didn't know much about God. And here I am training to be a biology teacher and a religion teacher, and I got a degree in biology, but I don't know much about God. And so that's when I started researching and looking things up. And I think I went through some of my old World Youth Day notes, and it was sort of stimulated by that. And around that time, a friend invited me around to a theology of the body course, which was great. We were just told no, but then this theology of the body explained the why. Yeah. Which is sort of the key part of our faith, of understanding why we do things. And so that was a big part. So it was theology of the body coming along at that time as well, as a healthy, positive view of explaining the church's teachings. And then so eventually I did join the seminary after that. And I, for me, it was quite clear that it was religious life was for me, because I couldn't sort of see myself living by myself, but also I think the call of Mary was quite strong within that. And so the Marists was the logical option. I was thinking of joining the Dominicans, actually. May or may not have told you this, but I didn't want to leave New Zealand, and the Dominicans were only in Australia. So I thought, I'll join the Marists because then I'll get to stay in New Zealand. And then, there's God has a little chuckle in the background there. And then it was literally 3 weeks after joining the seminary, the rector said, "Oh, Ben, you're doing quite well. We're going to send you to novitiate in the Philippines." And then halfway through the Philippines, they said, "We're changing where we do our theology. You're not going to go back to New Zealand and do your theology. You're going to go to Rome for 4 years." So, God's got a great sense of humor.
Yeah, but then I remember when we met in Rome, and you introduced me to some of your fellow brothers. You had an amazing mix of people from sort of Asia Pacific, and I think it was at your solemn vows, which was an incredible service with all these different languages in it. And was it Floyd? His name,
Floyd.
who's from Papua New Guinea, and we had the Gloria in Pidgin English. The thing that strikes out to me is remembering that for the sort of Lamb of God, you take away the sins of the world. The word take away was just TEKEWE, take away.
Yeah,
and so there were bits of the Gloria which was sort of just like immediately obvious to me in the sort of Pidgin English style, and other bits where I'm like, I can't actually see how the language links up there. But it was really, really beautiful, and you had such an impressive set of brothers out there. And tell us about that experience of studying in Rome.
Yeah, so that's Rome was great. It's not something I'd ever thought I'd end up doing. But again, God, when you sort of say yes to God, He just gives, and He's very generous, and in ways that you don't expect at the time, and ways that you won't even understand till many years later. The immense generosity of God, and it was a great time. Again, living with the internationality of the Society of Mary, because it's an international theologate that we have in Rome, and so we're studying with men from Mexico, Brazil, Central Africa, Eastern Africa. We had a Norwegian, and a lot from New Zealand and the Pacific, so Oceania, Samoa, Tonga, Papua New Guinea.
Yeah.
Well.
And what is your since ordination? What have you been up to?
So straight after ordination, I left Rome and was sent to New Zealand and worked as a deacon in a parish, and then was ordained a few months later, and then went back to the same parish and was there for about 4 years. And then after that, which was a great experience actually, I really enjoyed working in the parish, and we had 3 schools in the parish, and I trained as a secondary school teacher. So primary school kids were very completely different kettle of fish. But I eventually got the hang of explaining things, and I found music very helpful. So sort of just teaching them through song, teaching them songs. And to my greatest surprise, when I left, their favorite song was "Jesus, my Lord, my God, and my all." They loved it.
Wow.
The whole school sang and stood and sang it for me. So I was there for 4 years, and then I was back in Rome last year for a year, just doing the last year of my license, and then I've been in Wellington over here for about 6 months. I'm in another parish.
Wonderful. And what's your sort of reading of the kind of the state of the church in New Zealand at the moment? Is there, like in many countries in the English-speaking world, a revival of interest from young people, some of whom coming into the church for the first time? What are the opportunities that you're seeing?
Yeah, it is. It's a real thing. It's a lot of young people really interested in the faith, and they're interested in more they love Aquinas because he's clear. So that's often what I do. When they ask me to give talks, I just go through the Summa with them. Something I never expected that a group of young people would be interested in. But Part of the good thing about technology is they go and they can Google the Summa and they have it there, but they don't understand it properly, so they come and ask me. Very interested in the faith. The rosary has been huge. For the month of May, I said to the young people, well, look, how about we pray a rosary before we begin our meeting? And the number of young men coming has increased. Half of them aren't even Catholic, but they're just very intrigued with the rosary. And it actually surprises some of the parishioners. A group of young people kneeling in front of the statue of Mary and praying the rosary. It's just incredible.
It's beautiful, and it sounds like God is working a Dominican vocation through you. Even the Society of Mary, the Summa and the Rosary. You're doing good Dominican work with that. I can concede the Rosary to you as Society of Mary. That seems an appropriate thing you can do. But yeah, getting the Summa in there. But it does amaze me the number of young men in particular who get in touch with me, and particularly just during COVID, as a lot of the young guys did, they really went down wormholes on YouTube, and many of those wormholes have involved the Summa and going pretty deep. And so you'll get a sort of an 19-year-old with remarkable knowledge of Aquinas for somebody that age. And it's the power of the internet. Like, when it gets used for good, it's really, really powerfully good. But obviously, if you go down the wrong wormhole, then you can get them into pretty big difficulties.
That's right. Lots of traps that are there for you.
Yeah, and so you need sort of good mentorship and good friends. I think a recurring theme, both in what we've said, and it's the power of good community, the power of good friendships to lead you to the good places to drink from the living waters,
Very
not the stuff that
good
poisons.
Communities.
Yeah. Look, well, it's been so wonderful to have you on air. Thank you very much for joining us. We're going to play out it's slightly folky version, and I know you're not especially folky man, but Jesus, my love and my Lord. Given you said that was the favourite song of the primary school kids, so this is Jesus, my love and my Lord by the Malt Franciscans. But thank you so much, Father Ben, for joining us, and wish you every blessing in your work.
Likewise, thank you, Father Toby.
God bless.
God bless.